Hello, fellow romance book lovers. It is me, Kat, again. How are you doing? I have a great book today. I think I always say that. It's always part of my intro. I guess we should just come to expect that. I read a lot of really good books. Oops, that's my dog barking. Please excuse her if she barks in the background. I have the window open. It's a beautiful day today, and so she barks at everything. Anyway, let's talk about the book that I most recently read, which is called Medicine Man by Saffron A. This is the second book I've read from her. I read Unrequited, which I think I read, oh boy, probably at least a year ago. Really liked it. Saffron A writes taboo books. Taboo books. I don't know. I mean, yes, I suppose that's, the type of the trope, but to me, there's love everywhere, so it is what it is. I don't mind a taboo book. It depends on the subject matter, I guess, in some ways, but I'm open to it. I'm an open reader. I like to give every author a fair shake. If it seems interesting, I'm going to read it. So Saffron A writes taboo books, like I said, and Medicine Man is about a psychiatrist and his patient. So let's get into it. It is really an intense book. She does taboo so well. There is so much emotion. It's so authentic. It's really deep, serious, not frivolous. You can tell she puts a lot of work into her stories, and I, for one, super appreciate that. Sorry, my neighbor's pulling in and I wanted to make sure my dog wasn't barking. Anyway, so I really liked this book. It is really heavy. There's a warning in the beginning, so that tells you right off the bat that it's going to be a serious subject matter. But it's a romance book, so there's also, all of that's involved. It deals with a young woman and mental illness. So, it's not to be taken lightly, but it's a beautiful story. I loved it. Willow is the main character. She is a young woman, 18, 19, I think, and there's been an incident involving her at her house, and she's taken to the hospital, and then she goes into a state mental hospital for 48 hours, I think. And then it's recommended that she should do a longer stay at an inpatient facility, like a month, and she agrees to it. The interesting thing about Willow is that with a lot of people that deal with mental illness is that it's something that she feels bad about herself, and she feels bad that she upset her mom, and she feels bad that she feels different and not the same as everybody else, and it's really hard for her, and she tries to mask it and she tries to put on a brave face. It's not working though. Her mom sees her. Her mom realizes there's something going on, but she doesn't want to disappoint her mom. Her father is not in the picture. She makes a point of saying in the beginning of the book that she feels very different than her mom and her aunts. It's all women in their family. The men don't seem to be around. It's a small family. She talks about how beautiful her mom is, and her aunts and her grandmother, and they, she really seems like idolizes them, and they have, beauty and grace, and they're fashionable, and she really describes them as these really, amazing women and the full package. And she doesn't feel like she has that at all. And she has, oh, now there's noise in the background. There's an ambulance. I'm sorry. Anyway, she feels like she doesn't have the same qualities in her that her aunts and her mom and her grandmother have. She has her mom's beautiful blonde hair, but she says she must have her dad's eyes because she has green eyes, and all of the women in her family have blonde hair and blue eyes. So she automatically feels different. I thought it was interesting that she talks about her mental illness as it's not, she doesn't feel like it's dark. I don't know if that's the right word, but she feels this thing inside her And that's kind of how she describes her mental illness. And, she's very aware of it. So she goes to Heartstone, which is the month-long stay psychiatric facility that she is going to go inpatient in. And, she talks about pulling up to this building and her mom talking into the intercom and the gates opening, right away. And she said it was like magic. She pulls up and she talks, and then they open, and then there's this beautiful building, and it's, it's got a red roof, and it's peaked, roof, and it's this gorgeous, like a castle. And she says it's so sad because how could something that's so beautiful be so scary? And we learn in the book that it was built by a gentleman, a doctor, a psychiatrist, and he built it for his wife who had mental challenges, and he just wanted to save her, and he loved her so much that he built her this castle to help her and to save her because he loved her so much. And as it turns out, that doctor and his wife, the main character, Simon, he's their child. So we get introduced to Simon as a doctor that's coming to work at the facility at Heartstone, and his dad is no longer working there. He's not able to. He's older, and I think he has Alzheimer's, maybe. I'm not sure. But then there was another doctor that took over, and he's had some health challenges as well. So Simon Blackwood is brought in to kind of finally step into his father's shoes, and because he is also a psychiatrist, and he's, I think, in his younger 30s, if 30. We don't get a lot of him in the beginning. We get a lot of Willow, so you really feel like you get to know Willow really well. There are some really funny friends that she has, that she gets to know, the other girls that are around her age, and why they're there, and the nurses and the techs, and you learn about her life there and trying to get better, and her therapist and stuff like that. And I really, I didn't know much about any of that, and I felt like Saffron Kent really described all of that perfectly. And I really liked Willow. And she's not just, it's her illness is part of her, but she doesn't show it to anybody. She, like I said, she doesn't want to disappoint. She doesn't want to upset anyone, but she knows she's different, and my heart really pulled for her, and I wanted so much for her, and I just didn't know, if she wasn't going to let anyone in. She talks about how she won't talk to her therapist about the incident, and what is the incident? We don't know what the incident is, but yet it's talked about. What brought her, to the hospital originally, and then to the state hospital, and then to Heartstone. It's mentioned and it's talked about, but we don't know what happened. She also talks about how she has a little bit of a problem being a liar, but she's not deceitful. She's trying not to upset anyone, and so that's why she wants to be better, and she wants to be this great young woman, and so she tells some tall tales. And it was an endearing part of her personality but it was to her downfall. Her trying to put on a not necessarily happy facade, because she has been diagnosed with depression since she was 14. So it's not a happy facade, but she's still fighting. She's still trying to make it work, and then she just can't, and there's the incident. So something that I liked, of course, and I always mention about this book, is that we do get chapters that are specifically Willow and specifically Simon, and the chapters that are Simon are actually titled Medicine Man. It's not equal parts. We don't get equal. For a while in the book, we just get more of Willow in the beginning, and then we get a chapter thrown in from Simon. I liked that, though, that of course, I do like the dual perspective like that. But I liked that that the title was Medicine Man when it was his chapter. And the reason, and I always like to find out where the title comes from in the book, and the reason why it's called Medicine Man is that Willow describes him when she sees him. He's got his lab coat on and he's, dressed like a doctor, and she knows that. But when she really looks at him, she says that he looks like an old-fashioned medicine man, older than his time. He's just about 30 and he looks older than that because of the way he's dressed and what he puts out as far as his dress and his authoritative manner. And she says he's got wingtips on and he's got, like slacks on that are perfectly pressed and starched shirt and she talks about his wingtips, which I thought was funny, but that's why she calls him a medicine man, because he reminds her of what a doctor looked like a long time ago that would kind of dress like that. And so that's where the title comes from. So Willow does not like Dr. Blackwood when they meet. She's kind of like, where's the other doctor? She goes to her therapies, but she doesn't really partake. She can't let her walls down enough to talk about what her issues are. And, here he comes and she doesn't know him and, she doesn't want to talk to him. But he brings this different energy and she's drawn to that. And he does a couple of things right off the bat with her. She talks about the struggle of trying to find the right dosage of medication and coming off the other stuff she was on and being prescribed new stuff, and how it has messed with her sleep, and she's nauseous and she doesn't feel good and she wanted to sleep all the time, but they wouldn't let her. And he prescribes her a different sleeping medication to help her sleep, and she's able to sleep. And it's like this light bulb goes off for her. And, like I said, he puts on this outward persona of, how he's dressed and his voice, and then he helps her sleep, and it's like this light bulb goes off where she's like, oh, maybe I can trust him. Look, he helped me. He was able to help me. And then in their first session, immediately she tells him all this stuff because she just feels this connection with him right off the bat. And he just is, and she talks about, she's why did she just tell him all that? Why is it coming out of her? And it was like, he saw her for her, and she felt safe with him. And the big thing was, like, to start with, that she slept. So she felt like he took care of her in a way that she had never felt before, and really was listening and focused on her in a way she had never felt before, and saw her differently than anybody had seen her before. I want to read something that Willow talks about shortly after meeting him and getting a feel for him, and they start to have this rapport, and she likes him. And I want to read what she says about him. Medicine is in his blood like illness is in my blood, tainted with poison, and his is laced with the antidote. What a contrast. And that describes them perfectly. She feels like he's this balm to her soul, and she realizes that in the ways he's been able to help her through therapy and the sleeping and the regulating her medication and helping her when she's not nauseous, in addition to how she's beginning to feel for him, that he's helped her so much in such a short period of time. In that time, she's feeling very drawn to him, and he says, and so she wants to go see him all the time, and she's only supposed to meet with him once a week, and she has other therapists every day and other therapies during the day, but she's only supposed to meet with him once a week. But she finds herself wanting to go and see him all the time, and she talks about they gravitate towards each other. So when he might just be walking down the hall, or out visiting at lunchtime or just around, as he is because he works there and he's treating other patients and he's the head doctor. And so she says they always find themselves gravitating towards one another. So she knows that she's not the only one. She thinks she's not the only one feeling something. She feels like he's feeling something too. And she says, you know, she goes to his office and she's on a mission, and there's a nurse and she's like, you know, I can help you, Willow. What do you need? And she's like, no, only he can help me. And she's, you know, she's going to go, she wants to see him, and she's going to knock on the door, and the nurse is like, you know, trying to run interference because it's not her meeting time with him. It's not her appointment time. And she's like, no. He's the only one that can help me. You know, she's focused on him. And he, you know, he opens the door and, you know, he says to the nurse, you know, it's okay. And he says, I've got this. And again, it's like just those few simple words. And she feels like he does, like he's got her. And it's so simple. But you know, he's told the nurse, it's okay, I've got this. And she feels so safe with him. She talks about, she just wants to like put her head on his chest, have him wrap his arms around her, and stay there forever. And what a heady feeling that is for her, because she's never felt like that before. She's always felt like she can't be herself because she doesn't want to upset anyone. And yet here he is saying, accepting her, and knows everything about her. He's read her file. She tells him everything. She says more to him in their short sessions than she has said, you know, the couple days and even before in the other hospital, and even more than her mother. You know, she gives herself to him. And just in that simple way of saying, I've got this, she really feels like he's got her. So we know that there's something going on with Simon. We know that there's a reason why he's come back to work at Heartstone, and it's not just because his dad wants him to. We know that their relationship is very strained. We get little bits of his story in his chapters, and we know that his mom has passed away, and we find out that, you know, his dad built Heartstone for her, and that she had her own challenges, and that Simon stepped in, you know, as her caretaker, and because his dad then, even though he was a psychiatrist, he wasn't able to help his wife. And so he built this kind of, you know, this hospital, this not memorial because she was still alive and all that, but like this whole, you know, thing for her. But yet he couldn't save her. And we know that Simon is really pissed at his dad about that, and has his own issues about that carried through his life. And we know his mom has passed away, and we know that that part really affects how he deals with Willow and his feelings with Willow. And sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. I've got some hammering going on in the other room. But he has a savior complex, you know, but yet he feels like he can help her, and the way he talks to her is, it just tugged at my heart so much. He was like, promise me wherever you go in life, whatever you do, you'll always be a fighter. You always have to fight. There's no shame in fighting. He really made her feel like, even though she has challenges, that she can do it, and tomorrow's another day. If you just have to keep fighting. And it really, it did break my heart so much, because he knows his mom didn't. And his mom succumbed to her challenges, and how heartbreaking that is. And he doesn't want that to ever happen. He wants to give Willow the ability as a doctor to keep fighting every day. And then when he's, you know, falling in love with her, even more so. And it's something that he really struggles with. Okay, obviously, doctor patient, right? We know this in the story. But if you take that aside and you think about two people that are falling in love with each other who shouldn't be because of one reason or another, it's not just a cut and dry, they meet on the street type of, introduction. He still, regardless of whether he was her doctor or he was just her boyfriend or he was just a friend, he wanted her to keep fighting, and he made her feel like there was strength in that and there was a beauty in that, and she really absorbed that. And I loved that about her, that she took those pieces, that even when he wasn't with her, he gave her those and she was able to keep fighting. And that was really beautiful to see her thrive and to see her keep going. And I had to give her props. Her development through the story was really amazing, and I really liked that, and I really felt like I knew exactly who she was, and my heart was broken for her to begin with, and by the end of the book, she was a rock star. She was amazing. Willow is super intense. I said that before. But it's interesting, she separates her feelings that she has for Simon, like, the fact that, he's her doctor and she's the patient. Her feelings for Simon almost strengthen her and make her feel like she's stronger because of those. And she feels like he sees her for her, elementally sees her for her. And that gives her a lot of strength. There's a lot that goes on. It's a great story. At one point, after her time has finished, she leaves the hospital and she's going out and she's living her life. And she's gotten an apartment with some of her friends that she met in the hospital. Those were great characters. I like those girls. They were funny. But, she's trying to move on, and Simon is not in her life, and she's trying to move on, and she feels like, she's got a good job, she's doing something she's passionate about. She's a huge Harry Potter fan. That's a theme throughout the book. And there is one of the administrators at the hospital has kept in touch with her. And in the story that this woman knew Simon's parents, known Simon, his whole life, still works at the hospital. And that she kind of saw stuff between them, but didn't really say anything. But so there's more of a connection with her and Simon. There's a family friend kind of connection. And she has decided to try to keep in touch with Willow, and it's very sweet, and she calls like once a month, and poor Willow is kind of like, she knows that that's her connection to Simon, and she doesn't want to sever that connection, but she always asks if she's gone on a date yet, if she's dating anybody, is she putting herself out there, and and that's hard for her because Willow is trying to get over him and get beyond him, and it's obvious that it's not going to happen for them. And, that is really sad. And, I was like, oh no, it was a really hard part of the book. And it's interesting because she talks about this trying to move on. And I want to read this part too because I really liked it. Willow says, the ending is the hardest part and saying goodbye hurts the most, but it's beginning something new after that goodbye that's harder to cope with. Because when you begin something new after leaving something behind, the ghosts of that past always, always linger. And sometimes those ghosts never go away. You carry them in your heart. And isn't that so true? It's so true about life, not just in books. In absolute life, when you're trying to move on from something that has changed you as a person, it is hard. And I really felt deeply when she was talking about that, and she was really trying. And I liked the fact that we got an upswing for her. I liked the fact that we went on a journey with her being at a really low point in her life and not knowing what was going to happen, and going on this journey with her, and getting to a high point and having her be, living her life. I really liked being on that with her. And I'm not, the rest is, you have to read it to see, what happens. And I really liked how far we got to see in Willow's future. And that, in the same respect, she's on an upswing, but she also knows that there's things that she needs to do to keep herself healthy. And that was very touching and really thought-provoking, because you know what? We all struggle with things every day. And my struggles are not your struggles, are not anyone else's struggles, but we all struggle with something. We've all had things happen to us that change us fundamentally. And when you read, really good books and see really good movies that are done well and have a subject matter that's either important to you or something you like to read or whatever, and it really touches you the way this book touched me, this is why I'm a reader, and this is why it is so amazing to find new authors and read these really good stories and be able to put your mind in them and just immerse yourself in them. And it's just a story, but they're beautiful. And everything that Saffron Kent says in this book, I thought she did really well, and I would definitely highly recommend it, especially because you want to see where Willow ends up in her life. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Let me know if you have read Medicine Man in the comments, or Unrequited, which is Saffron Kent's other book that I read that I really liked. That's a professor and student type of book, which was really good. Again, super intense female character, and I love that. So thanks so much for watching. See you soon.